Welcome back to a Note to the Runners extended edition where I read a poem a day in the lead up to my book launch October 4th for my first poetry book, A Note to the Runners, an anthology of 42.2 poems. So we're up to day 3 and I'm going to start with the poem and then go into the little bit of backstory behind this poem. This one is called It Wasn't the Distance That Scared You. It wasn't the distance that scared you. Kilometers passed by, often quicker than expected. It was time. You were scared of time. Time alone, time hurting, time expecting, time chasing, time disappearing, time lost, time between. Time agonized you, not kilometers. You didn't train for the distance. You trained to sit with yourself, to sit with time. Now, this one is inspired by racing and particularly ultramarathons, or even a marathon or any kind of distance where you are just going out and really putting yourself on the line. I think I definitely feel this poem in a racing perspective more than, say, just a training or long run kind of mentality. And I think we are scared of time because we're not sure what's going to come up when we spend so much time by ourselves, or when we are in the hurt locker or in a dark or a really challenging place. It can feel like forever. It can feel like the longest time to get out of there. So I wrote that poem because it's not actually the kilometers that scared us. We're not scared of the kilometers. We're not worried about running 5 or 10 kilometers. We're worried about being 10, 15 minutes into a 5k effort and our legs are blowing up and maybe we feel embarrassed, maybe we feel shame that we're going to miss our time. Maybe we're 50 kilometers into a 100 kilometer race and we have no idea how we're going to get through the next 50k. It's not the kilometers, they're sweet, but it's the time. How are we going to spend this time? How are we going to sit with ourselves whilst we're hurting? What are we going to do with all these thoughts that pop up? And that's what we're scared of. But I think as we develop as athletes and runners and humans, we get better at sitting with these thoughts. We know, and we can train for these things. We know how to deal with that dialogue when it comes up in a race. We can work with a psychologist or a mentor to be like, hey, this is the dialogue that comes up when I'm running, when I'm in a dark place, when I'm really hurting. Like, what can I do? And there's mindfulness and meditations that we can do, or just simply acknowledging the thought, recognizing that it's come in and then letting it go. And that's kind of the backing behind this poem, is that it's never really the numbers that scare us. It's actually ourselves. And what do we do when... And then you can look at the other side of it and it's like, what do we do when we're ahead of time? What do we do when we bank so much time or we're ahead of the field and there's someone chasing us? Like, that is also a really crazy situation to be in, because I've been at the front of races and led from the gun and put a big gap into the field behind me, and then for the next, say, 15, 20 kilometers, I'm worried that I'm being hunted down. So I'm not actually concerned about the time left in the race. I'm worried about the time that I'm now losing that I once gained. So it's funny. Time is such a funny thing and it's such a scary thing. And I think we really feel the weight of it, which was what this poem was about. So Yeah, we don't really train for the kilometers. We train to sit with time. And I think also another great example of that is when you're in a great training block, you get used to going out for your Sunday long run or your midweek long run, and it feels so easy. And I think rather than the physical adaptations, you actually have these mental adaptations of being able to focus for a period of time. But when you're out of training and someone says, hey, go out for a long run, it's just like, it's the hardest thing ever. And again, it's not the kilometers, it's just like the time spent in focus that is difficult, and it's a scary place to know that you have to build that skill back up again. So that was what was behind poem number 3, and I would love to hear for you, what comes up when you hear the words time hurting, time expecting, time chasing, time disappearing, time lost, time between. Because for me, time between is the distance between two athletes. Time between is the distance between now and your next race. Time disappearing is when you're maybe going to you're aiming for a PB and you just see the clock just ticking away and you're like, I'm not going to make it. Or time expecting, just the expectations and the weight of expectation that we put on ourselves. So I'd love to hear what comes up for you with this poem. And that is the story behind poem 3. So if you'd like to pre-order the book, you can. There is a link in the show notes, in the bio, and I'll catch you tomorrow for poem number 4 and day 4 on the journey to A Note to the Runners book launch. Thank you.